Canada's relationship with China has weakened, but is also under intense scrutiny ever since China detained 2 Canadians nearly a month ago. Michael Kovrig's arrest in China became public on December 11th. He works for the International Crisis Group as a senior advisor on security issues in Northeast Asia. From 2003 to 2016, Kovrig served as a Canadian diplomat, spending most of his time in Beijing and Hong Kong. He actually served as political lead on the Prime Minister's visit to Hong Kong in September of 2016. On December 12th, news emerged that Michael Spavor had also been taken into custody. He's a Canadian businessman reportedly based out of the Chinese city of Dandong, which borders North Korea. From there, he runs an organization that promotes tourism and investment in North Korea. Spavor has been seen rubbing shoulders with the country's dictator, Kim Jong-un. Canada isn't, of course, the only country in a diplomatic tussle with China. Far from it. So how should the West navigate relationships with an emboldened China? Paul Evans is a professor at the Institute of Asian Research, at the University of British Columbia, and he joins me now. Hi, Professor Evans. Great to see you. Thanks for your time.
Glad to be with you. I
want to start off by asking you, Professor, a group of Canadian parliamentarians is going to China on Saturday to deepen business and people-to-people ties. Do you think that's a good idea, given what's happened over the last month, and particularly given that the fact that 2 Canadians are detained there?
I think it's important that there be as many lines of contact with China now as possible. It's not a time to cut things off, but to open up channels of communication. This is a rough patch in the Canada-China relationship, and it's a rough patch that could last for a while. The Madam Meng affair, the Huawei decisions are going to make this a pretty difficult few months in the first part of this year. And so parliamentarians who can speak with some counterparts, who can get a sense of the mood in Beijing, I think it's valuable, and we wish them success and hope that they can get some progress on some of the hard issues that the 2 countries are facing.
From where you sit, is it safe for them to travel there? And I ask you because we saw today, for example, the U.S. has updated its travel warning on China, urging, quote, increased caution.
Well, I think caution is always appropriate, but I think for a parliamentary group, as for 99.9% of travelers, having wits about them, making sure that it's a good time to speak with counterparts, if they're professors or if they're parliamentarians. I don't think they have to worry about their safety. How effective they can be, we'll see what the mood of the country is and who they're actually able to speak to.
The detainment of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, I think, has certainly spiked Canadians' interest in China, and particularly the stakes China has in so many parts of the world. You say 2019 is emerging as the year of global China. What do you mean by that?
Well, China has been a presence in the world in many ways, diplomatically, economically, people, culturally, for a couple of decades. What has changed is that by the year 2019, we're all aware that there's a new element of that Chinese presence, and it's what my students like to emphasize as the word innovation. 5 years ago, we asked the question, why can't China innovate? Is it because of limitations in their political system or their economic and their corporations, economy and their corporations? The question we're now asking is, why is China able to innovate so effectively in many new areas that are crucial to a global economy and the new technologies of the 4th Industrial Revolution? So what a change in just a few years from the China that can't to the China that can, and makes us a little bit nervous because it can do so well.
So what changed, though? What did change that allowed for that to evolve?
Well, I think partly it is technology, contacts with the outside world. Some of those that have taken technology and ideas in a legal way. Some of them that were stolen technologies and other things. China has a technological base, and for the last decade has been ramping up its research and development capabilities, the scientists, the engineers, the people that are the backdrop to technological innovation. They've created an environment, an ecosystem in China that has proven very effective. We see it in in e-commerce, in some of the new technology sectors like artificial intelligence. They've got something they've put together that it actually authoritarianism with Chinese characteristics gives them some advantages. And I think it's that is causing fear in the United States and in some other countries, including sometimes in Canada.
Yeah, especially right now, I imagine. Is that fear warranted from your perspective? And how would you describe the fear? Like, what should we be nervous about?
Well, I think here in Canada right now, we're wrestling with Madame Meng and her arrest here in Vancouver. But beneath that is a technology war that is being conducted between the United States and China. And it's Huawei. Decisions that we need to make about a company's investment in our new communications network. There's a nervousness that Huawei, there's a security risk, but there's also a competition risk. They are producing better product at a lower cost and more advanced technologically than what some others can produce. And that makes these decisions around Huawei representative of a whole number of things we're going to have to deal with this new global China.
What does the future look like? Is the problem going to get bigger, or are there problems that might impede China's development?
There are many problems that will impede China's development. The economic conflict with the United States, the trade wars, are going to hurt some things in the short term. Huawei is being banned or kept out of some other countries, some of our principal allies. Those things will have an impact. However, I think that that's likely to be short term. If we pull ourselves out of the Chinese economy, if we don't link to them in these areas, the Chinese will move ahead because of the size of their domestic market. And in Asia, in Korea, Japan, and Africa, Chinese products, Chinese technology is proving very, very welcome in their worlds. So we're in this edge. Do we want to work with China, as difficult as it is, or do we want to pull away from China? America is making the decision to treat China as an adversary and an enemy and to decouple, to pull out. Here in Canada, I hope we can make a more nuanced decision than all or nothing. Restrict them in some areas, cooperate in others.
Yeah, I want to ask, so do you think that nuance is possible? And I feel like we have been talking about, especially where trade is concerned, that whole idea, talk to them about human rights, but at the same time pursue greater trade with them. Now we have a situation that affects Canadians very specifically. We have 2 Canadians detained there. We don't know what the future holds from them. A legal process that's unfolding that is very opaque. How do you square the circle for Canadians who, understand the points you're making about the future of China and the market there, but who are also seeing, 2 Canadians being held there with, as I said, no real end in sight?
Well, these hostage-like situations are pretty ugly. If we think in big historical terms, the United States in Iran, when the American diplomats were held hostage there, affected that relationship, up to the present point, 40 years later. In the context of what we have now, I think that this may be a tipping point. Public attitudes that have been pretty pragmatic about China, I think, are being influenced in the direction of more anxiety. We also have to recognize the same things happening on the other side. Canada, that was the land of Norman Bethune and Dashan, the famous comedian. Suddenly we're being looked at through a new lens. So this is a real testing point in our relationship. How do we get through it? Well, we manage these cases. Our relationship is so much bigger than any particular hostage event or the detentions, as deplorable as they may be. So we try to move on other fronts. We try to find not places we can change China, but where we can live with China. That's the challenge. And it takes a lot of courage, boldness, and self-confidence to be able to deal with a China that is bold and self-confident itself.
All right, I'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much, Professor Evans, for your insight. Really appreciate it.
Enjoyed speaking with you very much.